We have a lot of details about what this August 11th offer was, Chris. Just run us through them.
Yeah, as you mentioned, these are some big concessions because they were real sticking points that had the whole deal falling apart last May. So artificial intelligence, previously the studios weren't saying any definitives. They just wanted to keep meeting to discuss it. Now they're saying they're going to put something in writing that says writers will still have jobs. Streaming data, this was a huge thing because in the streaming era, there's no actual data available like in the Nielsen ratings on how well shows are doing, or at least not shared publicly or even privately with the writers. So there's some assurances that that will happen. Also, another big deal, this issue called mini rooms, which are smaller groups of writers that meet before a show is picked up. There's some assurances in the new proposal that they'll have, if not specific number of writers employed, at least some guarantees on the hours that they're paid for.
This is a media story, a labor story, but it's really a tech story when you're thinking about the protections around artificial intelligence, when you're thinking about, of course, ultimately how they get the data in terms of how successful their writing is. Chris, how does this play out now for actors as well?
There are many of the same issues that the writers have, that the actors have as well. And indeed, we reported Nielsen data from this morning that shows this is the first time ever that traditional TV has fallen to less than half of all viewing. So this revolution that's happening with streaming is accelerating, and the writers and actors have said that the contracts that they've signed in the past just don't reflect these new technologies.
Yes. Residuals, Chris, are a big part of the compromise. Explain what a residual is and what is on offer to the writers.
Residuals are when a writer gets paid after the first airing of a show. So let's say you write a show for CBS. CBS then sells it in syndication to a cable network or a streaming service. And historically, writers and actors, everybody in the business has made a lot of money off those after sales. What happened in the streaming era is that Netflix would buy a show and keep it on Netflix, and there wasn't all of that money in residuals in the streaming era. So new proposals are for increases in the pay that the actors and writers get for that.
He breaks it all down for us. Chris Palmieri, we thank you so much for the latest in this ongoing, well, let's call it a saga, because we want to go even deeper into it with a man who really understands the world of content creation and syndication. Stephen Wolfe Pereira is with us of 3PAS Studios. And we've talked about this a few times with you, Stephen, and indeed the changing world of production. From your perspective, was this good news? Do you think that this will end the strike? How important is it to end the strike?
Look, thanks again for having me. Any conversations are good because they have not been talking, but the reality is they're still very far apart. And Labor Day is almost upon us. That's typically the kickoff of the fall broadcast season. So if this continues past September and really starts to get into the October timeframe, it's really going to impact production. It's going to impact all the new series, certainly sports, kind of animation, scripted. All these things are going to be up in the air, obviously unscripted as well, late night. But the truth of the matter is you're talking about the elephant in the room, which is AI. And, this whole conversation has really been around 3 C's. It's been around consent, it's been around compensation, and copyright. And the truth of the matter is AI is not going to take someone's job. It's someone using AI.
I see. And so to that end, a lot of the, I don't want to call it hype, but a lot of the headlines that have been around this worry about artificial intelligence, do you think it's right that they should be so concerned around it?
I mean, I think yes, because the truth of the matter is we typically overestimate technology in the short run, but we underestimate it in the long run. And the truth of the matter is this is not new. I mean, there's always been new technologies coming into Hollywood, into every industry, and we have to adapt to it. When you see all the power of generative AI, how it's going to really streamline the pipeline, the production processes, whether the development process, it's going to get used. I mean, people are using it today. And the truth of the matter is, look at where folks are going to. When there is no content being done by either the studios or, all the issues with, the guilds, people are going to TikTok. People are going to Twitch. They're going to go to other places, other creators that are going to be making content. And I think it's really important that everyone understands that they have to come together for this industry to be sustainable and for it to be economically viable.
There was a part of the Bloomberg report we did not get to with our editor, Chris Palmieri, which is, according to our sources, Ted Sarandos, the Netflix co-CEO, and Bob Iger have come in very recently and started to weigh in on these negotiations. How much of a signal is that to you, that it is getting painful, the halt in production that's taken place as a result of these strikes?
I mean, it is painful, but I think you really need to bifurcate on the studio side, the two different groups. There are the technology companies, and then there are the traditional media companies. And certainly they both have different interests, but they have to come to the table. And look, we really are lacking any true ambassador in the industry. I think Bob Iger really takes that mantle, and he's been doing his efforts to really kind of bring people to the table again. But the truth of the matter is, how do we resolve this? Because it is going to impact the whole industry. Content will continue. Technology continues to innovate. And if folks don't figure out how to make content, how to bring all parties together so that it's going to be truly a win-win. I mean, when you think about studios, when you think about actors, when you think about writers, they need the data. I mean, this really is a story about data. We actually have a couple of films coming out this fall. We have Aristotle and Dante. We have a film called Radical that won at Sundance. We have things happening in Spanish language TV. So, the truth of the matter is, us as a studio, as a production house, we need the data from the streamers so that we could understand our audience, understand what's working, what's not working. And so any type of concession where it's truly going to be a win for the strikers, but as well as for the studios, we have to bring everyone together, because if not, people will go to different places. The audience is always going to seek out entertainment wherever it's going to be viable.
You mentioned some key words there: streaming, content. Caroline made this point earlier. It's a technology story, but there are essentially two different industries here. There's the legacy production and entertainment industry. Then there's the tech players. So how does it end differently for both?
Well, I mean, if we're really being blunt about it, the truth of the matter is the technology companies, this is almost like a side hustle for them, right? I mean, whether Apple is going to figure out what to do with, kind of their content, they also have their core business, which is, making hardware, making software, and making services. Same thing you could argue for a lot of the other tech companies like Amazon. But when it comes to the traditional media companies, I feel like they really are trying to figure out how to make this leap. Certainly analysts have been talking about it, and you see all of Wall Street really starting to punish, the media companies because they haven't figured this out. So I feel like it's in everyone's best interest to get to the table, really start to share the data. I don't understand why we cannot have transparency and understanding the audience. It's good for the streamers, it's good for the writers, it's good for the actors.
Yes.
And in day and age, they need to understand their audience.